Rain, falling on a temple roof. Somewhere in northern India, 25 centuries ago, a young monk sits alone under a single candle. He isn't praying. He isn't chanting. He's just sitting, watching one thing happen inside his own chest: anger. It arrived an hour ago, when another monk took the last of the rice. And now the young monk, we'll call him Citta, is doing something strange. Instead of pushing the anger away, he's staring straight at it. He whispers one question into the dark. Who is angry? He waits. No answer comes. Just the candle, flickering. That question asked by one ordinary, frustrated young man on one ordinary night is where this entire story begins. Right now, in this exact second, something is happening inside you that you've never actually seen. Not your heartbeat. Not your breath. Something faster than both. In the time it takes you to read this sentence, your mind has already switched on and off. Thousands of times. Not as a figure of speech. Literally. On. Off. On again. You call this me. You call it my mind. Your whole life, you've assumed it's one smooth, unbroken thing, a single steady awareness, sitting quietly behind your eyes, watching the world go by. Citta, that night under the candle, believed exactly the same thing. Until he started looking closer. Have you ever snapped at someone you love over something that, 20 minutes later, felt almost embarrassingly small? That's not a flaw in your character. That's a moment. A specific, temporary moment with its own causes, and Citta was about to discover exactly how it works. He kept sitting, kept watching, and slowly, something shifted. The anger he thought was solid started looking less like a rock and more like a flame. Flickering, changing, never quite the same from one instant to the next. He didn't have a word for what he was seeing yet, but he was about to get one. Years later, people would ask him how he taught what he'd found. And the answer surprised them. He taught it two different ways. To ordinary people, in ordinary conversation, he used ordinary words, times, person, self, you, I. Simple language, so people could understand each other. Nothing wrong with that. It's just convenient. But there was a second, stricter way of looking, reserved for anyone who wanted to see reality with absolutely nothing to hide behind. In that stricter view, every comfortable word got stripped away. No person. No self. Just what is actually happening, moment by moment, underneath the label. People said this stricter teaching was hard. Not because it was mystical, because it refused to let you hide behind the word I. And under that unflinching lens, reality turned out to be built from only 4 things. Only 4. 1. The bare act of knowing something, no soul attached, just knowing. 2. The qualities that color each moment of knowing, feelings, intentions, and everything in between. 3. Matter, everything physical, boiled down to its simplest properties. 4. One thing that isn't built from causes at all and never falls apart. Notice something missing from that list. You times as a fixed, permanent thing isn't on it. What you call yourself is really just a fast, shifting mix of the first 3, moving together so tightly it feels like one continuous person. The first of these 4 things has a name. Citta was about to learn it. Citta. Picture a candle again, but this time, imagine it as a single flame that keeps going out and relighting itself, thousands of times a second. So fast, the flickering looks like one steady flame. That's Citta. Its job is disarmingly simple. It knows something. Not a soul. Not a watcher behind the scenes. Just knowing. Seeing a color. Hearing a sound. Feeling a sudden flash of anger over a bowl of rice. Every one of those is Citta, doing the one thing it does. Here's the part that stopped Citta cold. Citta can't exist without something to know. There's no such thing as pure awareness floating around, aware of nothing. Mind and object show up together like a hand, and whatever it's gripping. And it never shows up alone, either. Every single moment of knowing arrives with a whole cluster of mental qualities attached to it: attention, feelings, intention, and depending on the moment. Maybe greed, maybe kindness, maybe grief. Think of Citta as a king. The king never walks out alone. He always arrives with his full court beside him, all looking at the exact same thing, in the exact same instant. The king gets all the credit. I saw that. I felt that. But he has never once acted without his court standing right there with him. Which quietly destroys something almost everyone believes without question, that there's a calm, separate watcher sitting behind your reactions, observing safely from a distance. There isn't. The watching and the reacting happen in the very same breath. Citta sat with that for a long time. Rain kept falling outside. And then he asked the question that actually unsettled him. If there's no separate watcher, then where, exactly, is times he? He searched. In his body just matter, breaking down and rebuilding itself, replaced many times over a life. In some hidden soul, quietly watching from somewhere, he looked, and found nothing there either. What he found, every time he looked closely, was only this: one moment of knowing something, followed by another moment of knowing something else, one after another, so fast the gaps disappeared. The same way still photographs, run quickly enough, turn into a moving picture. There was no him behind the moments. There were only the moments. This wasn't despair. Something real was still happening, a genuine, ongoing process. But the solid, unchanging self he'd assumed was steering it from the inside. Simply wasn't there under close inspection. And here is the part that, for Citta, changed everything. Actually, seeing times this, not just agreeing with it, but seeing it directly, felt like putting down something heavy he didn't know he'd been carrying. So much suffering, he realized, comes from defending an I that was never solid to begin with. But if there's no fixed self, then how does a single moment of Citta actually switch on? Nothing here happens by accident. For any moment of Citta to arise, 4 things have to line up, all at once. Remove even one, and it simply can't happen. An object, something for the mind to know. A doorway, one of 6 channels: eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, or the mind itself. A base, the physical support behind that doorway. And the right conditions, including the momentum built up by everything that came before, shaping which kinds of moments are even available to arise at all. When those 4 align, a moment of Citta has times to arise. Not because some inner self decided to pay attention. It's a lawful, conditioned event, as reliable as a spark jumping when flint strikes steel under the right conditions. Which means consciousness isn't some unexplainable mystery. It runs on cause and effect. Change the conditions, and a different moment arises instead. This is why real change was never really about willpower alone. Willpower is just another flickering moment, arising from its own causes. Real change comes from shifting the conditions themselves. Let's slow time down, the way Citta learned to, and watch one single moment happen. Imagine a red flower entering your field of vision. A second before that, your mind was resting quietly, not thinking about anything, just idling, like the still surface of a lake between ripples. That's what your mind is doing right now, underneath these very words. The instant the flower's shape touches the eye, that stillness gets disturbed. A precise sequence fires off, one step handing to the next, like runners passing a baton. Attention turns. Bare seeing happens, no judgment yet, no story. then receiving, then investigating, then a flower, red, on a stem. And then comes the moment that actually matters, several moments of full, reactive experiencing. This is exactly where something wholesome or unwholesome gets planted. Finally, a couple of moments of settling, and the whole thing dissolves back into stillness until the next object arrives. It happens too fast for an untrained mind to notice the separate steps. That's why a room full of sights and sounds feels like one seamless scene, when it's really an impossibly fast switching between separate flickers. There's no self running any of it. There's only the sequence unfolding on its own. Citta spent the next several years mapping this flame in more and more detail. Not because he wanted a system, because every new question kept opening onto another room he hadn't noticed yet. Picture a house. Not a small one, a house with wings and floors you'd need a lifetime to fully explore. The biggest wing, the one you and I live in almost every waking hour, is loud, crowded, full of sight, sound, taste, touch, and ordinary wanting. That's where checking your phone lives, where a snapped word lives, where most of a human life is actually spent. A second wing, quieter, opens only through deep meditation states, where the mind sets its usual cravings down and simply rests. A third wing, subtler still, holds rooms with no walls at all, awareness resting in something as vast as infinite space. And a fourth wing, the smallest and rarest in the whole house, holds only a few rooms, the direct, unmistakable moments of full awakening. 54 rooms, then 15, then 12, then 8. 89 in total. And every single moment of your inner life, right now, is standing in one of these rooms. Not roughly, exactly. But there's one room in this enormous house that even Citta almost missed. He noticed it on an ordinary afternoon, listening to a cartwheel creaking outside the monastery gate. The sound itself, just the creak, just the raw noise, had no charge to it at all. Not good. Not bad. Simply neutral. It was only a fraction of a second times after times the sound, in the reacting that followed, that irritation got built on top of it. The creak was never the problem. What he built on top of it was that tiny, almost invisible gap between bare contact and the reaction stacked on top of it is exactly where an entire meditation practice lives. Not as a metaphor, as the literal address where that kind of practice does its work. Now the darker wing of the house, the one most people recognize instantly. Have you ever opened your phone just to check one message, and 30 minutes disappeared? That small, sticky pull reaching for something pleasant and not wanting to let go has a name. Greed. Not the villain kind. The completely ordinary, 5 times a day kind. Have you ever snapped at someone over something that, later, felt embarrassingly small? That's the mind pushing away, trying to escape something unpleasant. Hatred, in its most everyday form. And quietly running underneath both of those, without ever announcing itself, simple unclarity. Not seeing the situation as it actually is. It's present inside greed, present inside hatred, present even on its own, as plain doubt, or as that restless, can't settle down feeling at 1 a.m, scrolling for no reason at all. Here's the part Citta found strangely comforting, not shameful. None of this is a character flaw. It's simply what an untrained mind, moving too fast to see itself, naturally produces. Which means the reverse is true too. If it arises from causes, it can stop arising when those causes are removed. The mind isn't a fixed fate. It's a process. And processes can change. And the brighter wing which, quietly, holds the majority of the house. Generosity that doesn't need to be asked twice. Letting go instead of gripping tighter. Warmth towards someone who hasn't earned it yet. And in its most developed form, real clarity. Actually seeing, instead of reacting on autopilot. Not every good action carries equal weight here, and not for the reason you'd expect. A moment of generosity that comes up freely, joyfully, paired with real understanding of why it matters, that's the most powerful version there is. Generosity given reluctantly, under pressure, with no joy attached, still counts. Just thinner, less transformative. It was never really about the outward act. It was always about the quality of mind behind it. Somewhere near the end of his life, Citta was asked why any of this should matter to someone who isn't a monk at all. Here's what he said. If you believe you're a fixed, solid self, a permanent character with a permanent flaw, change starts to feel almost impossible. You end up saying, "That's just who I am," and stopping there, like the sentence is a wall. But what you feel in any difficult moment was never a permanent feature of your being. It was a specific, temporary, conditioned flicker arising from identifiable causes, lasting a breathtakingly brief instant, and then completely passing away. Fully capable of not arising the next time those causes line up differently. This isn't a comforting story invented to soften pain. It's something you can test yourself just by watching your own mind closely enough to see it as a stream of moments, arising and passing, instead of one solid self. There is still one wing of that house we haven't opened. The smallest one. The rarest. The rooms where a single moment of mind can touch the unconditioned directly, not think about freedom, but times it, the way an eye simply knows a color the instant it opens. Citta never told anyone exactly what he saw the night he first stepped into that room. Only that afterward, the candle looked the same, and nothing else did. That's a story for another night. Right now, tonight, try this. Don't change anything. Just notice the very next thought that shows up. Don't follow it. Don't judge it. Just watch it arrive. And watch it leave. That gap you just felt, before you reacted to whatever came next, that's not a metaphor. That's the exact place this whole path points to. You are not one fixed mind. You are 89 possibilities, and in this exact second, one of them is arising, shaped by everything that came before, shaping everything that comes next. That's not despair. It's the opposite. Tonight, before you fall asleep, watch one thought arise. Before you call it mine, that single observation might change everything. If this left you wanting to go further, I've dropped a few book recommendations in the description. And if it gave you even one moment of clearer seeing, subscribe and walk this path with us.